last week's video, I converted my wood stove that I built so it can burn liquid fuel. And so it worked really good, better than I thought it would, and real simple. All I did was just take an empty can here. This had cranberry sauce in it. And I put just some kerosene in here and just lit it on fire and put it inside the stove and then lit it on fire. And it got hot enough I could cook on, and it warmed the boat up quite a bit. And then I decided I'm going to try 2 cans. So I put 2 cans in here, and I can actually fit, I'm pretty sure, 4 cans in here. And but I put in 2 cans, and it got pretty warm. I still had to run I have a little electric space heater. It's real small, and I have it under my table here where I sit most of the time. And because this is up high, I still needed, the temperature was getting down into the low 40s, and so I still had to run the floor heater before I was using the stove, and I was just using the floor heater. When it gets really cold in here, my legs are warm, but my upper body gets cold. And so last night I had the floor heater going. At first I just had this going, and it actually kept me pretty warm. But when it started getting down in the low 40s, I went ahead and turned the floor heater on, and it was perfect. I mean, it was just perfect, awesome. So now I'm going to try something different. Last week I put in some magnets in here, some neodymium magnets. Are extremely strong, and I have these little square ones. They're about a ½ inch square, and I put 3 of them in here so when I put this in the stove it wouldn't move around, because when you're out sailing the boat heels over, depending on what tack you're on, and then of course there's wave action and stuff, so I didn't want this sliding around inside the stove. So I put these magnets in there, and it held really good. Matter of fact, it would stick to the side of this and hold. The strange thing was I went ahead and I put in about 3/4 of an ounce of kerosene in here. It was the first test, and I lit it, and it burned for 1.5 hours, maybe almost 2 hours. And after it burned all the way down and the fuel was gone, and I let it cool for a couple minutes, it cooled down really fast, the can did. When it cooled down, I took the can out, and when I lifted the can up, I noticed that the magnets weren't sticking. And these magnets are really strong. And I didn't know this. I should look this up on the internet. It must have been from the heat. I don't know if it was the heat or the kerosene or the combination of both, but those magnets were totally worthless after they were in there for about 1.5 hours. It must have been the heat, I would think, but they use those kind of magnets in electric motors and in generators, and they get hot. So you'd think that would damage the magnets, the heat. So I don't know what caused it. I got several of these magnets. I might just put one of those magnets up on top of the stove here where it gets really hot, and then burn the stove for a while and see what happens to that magnet. So I'll know if it was the heat or the kerosene, or it might have been a combination of heat and kerosene that did that. But yeah, those magnets wouldn't stick to nothing. They wouldn't even stick to each other. I mean, I just threw them in the garbage. Last week I was thinking about using some kind of wick in here. And matter of fact, last night when I was testing it, I burned several cans. I think I did it 3 times. And one of them I twisted up a paper towel. That's how I was lighting them. And I put the paper towel in here, and I had the paper towel kind of arched up over the top of the can. And because it soaked up fuel, it was working like a wick. And so the paper towel did eventually burn, but it took a long time for it to burn because it had kerosene on it. So last week I was talking about this carbon filter here I got at the pet store. It's for aquariums, and it had a couple different kinds. And the first kind I had was this right here, and you can see right through it. And so it's supposed to be carbon, and I lit the corner of it with a lighter, and it melted, started on fire, and I thought, yeah, I don't know about this stuff. And then I did the same with this. This is a lot heavier and thicker it's like a foam pad, and it did light and it did burn, but it was a lot slower than this. So I think what I'm going to try now is I'm going to cut a piece of this and stuff it down in this can and have the top of it sticking up a little bit. I'm going to put some kerosene in here. I'll light this on fire and see what happens and see if this is any kind of improvement. So now I want it to stick up out of the can a little bit, probably about maybe that much. So I'm going to cut it right about here. And, you know, wicks for kerosene lanterns are made out of, I think, just cotton. I'm sure in the old days it was probably cotton or linen or something like that. But, you know, they last quite a long time because they got kerosene, you know, they're saturated with kerosene. So the wick itself doesn't really burn too much. It'll eventually burn, but real slow. So I want to see if I can get the same thing going on with this here. And we'll see what happens. I don't have much kerosene left, so I don't know if it's going to be enough to wick all the way up. I may have to pour some on this pad just to kind of get it going. And we'll see what happens. I just bought some number 2 diesel, and that's what my boat engine runs on. So I bought about 4.5 gallons. And so I'm going to go ahead and start running diesel fuel in here instead of kerosene. It's just, for one thing, it's easy. It's easy to get. You know, gas station has it. So I'll cut this foam here, and I'm going to put it in the can. Stuff it all the way down to the bottom. This might be on the high side. Okay, let's see what happens with this. Maybe it might be an improvement. So what I'm going to do now is I got a little kerosene still left here. I don't know how much. Doesn't feel like very much. But I'm going to dump it down in here and see if it wicks up. Now, I don't know which burns hotter, kerosene or diesel. I would assume probably diesel. But I'm not sure. I guess I can look that up on the net. But I'll find out when I start burning the diesel, which will be tonight, when this kerosene's gone, because it's not a lot here. And I don't want to put too much in because, oh, that's another thing. I just realized, because I got this wick in here, I may have a hard time getting it into the stove without spilling the kerosene out of here. It looks like it's going up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just pour a little kerosene on top, because when I light this, I don't want to wait forever to get this going. When I light this, I don't want it just to burn the filter without fuel on it. So I'm going to just pour a little bit. I need to put this over in case I spill it. Just put some in the middle. Yeah, it's definitely wicking. Okay, I think that's good enough to give it a try. We'll see what happens. I hope this thing don't smoke a lot. I don't want to freak my neighbors out thinking my boat's on fire. Last thing I want is them calling the fire department. Okay, see if I can get this in here without spilling it. Yeah, not a problem. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I'm just going to light it and get it centered in here so it looks good. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to light a piece of paper towel. And we'll see if this is going to be any kind of improvement. There it goes. Put this over here. Let the smoke go into the stove instead of all over my boat. And the wick is working. Let's see if I can snuff this damn thing out here. Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's working. There it goes. Okay, now I'm going to go outside and just poke my head out the hatch and see if there's any smoke coming out. Like I said, I don't want to freak out my neighbors. I don't think it's smoking. Doesn't look like it. Let's see what happens. Oh, it just melted the whole... Yeah, I was worried about that. It just melted the whole wick. It's gone. I mean, it's burnt down to the top of the can. So yeah, that didn't work. So what I need to get is some carbon felt, and it's 100% carbon, and it won't burn. I mean, eventually it will probably burn, but it'll take a long time. So that'll be a wick that will never really burn up. Maybe over time, but it should last a very long time. So I'll probably try that in the future. I just need to get some. And next thing I'm going to do is once this kerosene's used up, which will be early this evening, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch to burning number 2 diesel and see how that goes. So I'm not going to put any wicks in there. I'll just burn the diesel. And I forgot to get alcohol, rubbing alcohol today. I was going to get 97% or whatever I can find, highest percentage of rubbing alcohol. And I was just going to, instead of putting these cans in here, I was just going to pour some alcohol directly into the stove. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour the alcohol in first and just pour like a whole bottle in here. Or just enough to get, well, actually, I don't need to put a whole bottle. Just enough to have a little bit in the bottom of the stove. And then I can look to see if the weld that I have here is watertight. I welded this water lift muffler for my other boat. I installed a diesel engine in my other sailboat that I had. And I built my own water lift muffler. So it was similar to this kind of wood stove. It was a pipe like this, so about a little bit smaller maybe, but about the size of this steam pipe here. And when I welded it inside and out. And then I checked it to see how watertight it was, and I poured water in it, and the weld was leaking in spots. So I had to go back and re-weld it to make sure that it was totally airtight. And it worked good. It was great. It worked really good, and it didn't leak or anything. So, but I've never tested this wood stove to see if it's, going to be, the weld's going to be tight enough so it don't leak. Because last thing I need is have a fire in here with liquid fuel and it starts leaking out into the boat here. That wouldn't be good. So, yeah, because I can also burn alcohol in here, and it might work best if I don't even use those cans and just fill this bottom part up with diesel or alcohol or whatever I'm going to be burning, and just light the whole bottom on fire. I mean, that's how a lot of diesel stoves work on boats. There's ones that heat the fuel and pressurize the fuel, and those are more efficient and they burn hotter and they burn really good. But there are diesel heaters that are nothing more than like usually a stainless steel container of some kind, and it has a flue so it can draft outside the boat. So it's like a chimney, and you just pour diesel in the bottom of this can basically and light it on fire, just kind of like what I got going on in here. They're not as efficient and they don't get as hot. The pressurized ones are really cool, and I may go ahead and start experimenting with building a pressurized system to put inside here, and see if that's going to be any better. There's different ways of doing it. So basically, you like one of the ways they're doing now is I'm seeing people are taking copper tubing and they take one and goes down into a can with fuel in it, and then it comes up and it makes a coil, a couple turns, and then the other end goes back down in the can. So both ends are in the fluid, and then they drill a little hole in the coil, but at the bottom, so the flame shoots up and heats the copper tubing on the top part of the coil, which then that heats that copper tubing, and that heat goes down into the can, and then it pressurizes the can so that it's kind of airtight, but you wouldn't want it so airtight that it'd explode, but you'd want it probably just to be able to get a little pressure in there, and that forces the fuel up into the coil into where the burner is, and it also vaporizes the fuel, so it burns clean and a lot more efficient. Something that small wouldn't put off a lot of heat, but I don't know. I might experiment with different things to see what I can do, but right now this is working good, and it's working good enough to keep me warm. I was talking in my last video about this wood stove that I designed it with a vent back here and this pedestal. It's sitting on this pedestal that I built out of tile, and I made it so it's all open. The pedestal is all open in the back here, and and then I have a duct that I ran down in here, and it goes down to the floor, and so I still need to cut a hole in the engine box. This is my engine box. My diesel engine sits in here, and the stove's sitting on top. And what I want to do is put a fan down there, and it'll suck air from behind the stove where it's hot and blow it out down on the floor. And that way I won't have to hopefully run my little space heater, my little electric heater, and then I can heat everything with just the stove here. But when I was running, I had 2 cans of kerosene in here last night, and usually when I burn wood in here, this tile back here gets really hot. I mean, you can't even touch it. It's scary hot. It's almost too hot. But when I was burning kerosene in here, like what I got going now, it didn't even really get hot at all until several hours when I really got it rip-roaring fire in here. It did start getting hot, and I think it's probably, if I get a real good hot fire with the liquid fuel in here, that it'll work the way I want it to. I know with the wood in here, it'll definitely work good. When I burn wood in here, this thing it'll burn you out of here. It gets so hot pretty quick. So, at any rate, that's it. And I'm going to try diesel here later, probably tonight, and see how that works. But if this video was helpful or entertaining, please like and subscribe.